Hello, my sweet friends. I'm so happy to welcome you to day one of our 12 Days of Christmas in July series. We have so much great holiday inspiration lined up. I hope that you plan to join me for the whole series. If you're new around here, welcome. I hope that you will consider hitting the subscribe button to join our crafty little family. And for today's project, we're going to be making this oh so sweet and Christmassy inspired mini album. So let's get to work. For today's project, I'm using the Rosy Cosy Christmas collection. This is from P13. I picked up the 12 by 12 paper pad. Has a beautiful combination of large holiday florals paired with pattern papers like plaids, stripes, and polka dots. And then to go along with that, I have a couple of extra cut apart sheets. These are basically ephemera. You just cut them out yourself. So I got Christmas treats, and then I also got the Four Seasons winter page, and I'm also going to use a couple of the cut aparts that came with the paper pad. So this is going to be lots of fun ephemera to layer on our book. So here's our cover. Now, we created this base last week during the tutorial portion of our flamingo mini album that is created with the Dollar Tree photo album. And so I'm going to link that in the description so that you can see how the base is created. We have to split it up into two separate videos because this one is just going to be way too long. For that tutorial, I did share with you how we took half of the pages out, the inside plastic sleeves, and then created the cover that's very sturdy and substantial and chunky, has a couple of extra pockets inside. I want to expand on that today. So what we're going to do is take even more of those pages out. We're going to go from 12 now. I took 3 out of the front, I flipped it over, and then I took 2 more out of the back. So we have a better amount of plastic sleeves and we have room to add more paper. What I want to do is share with you how to incorporate these larger pages into the book, and I've got that plastic sleeve sandwiched inside, so we have to go back to our wet glue, unfortunately, but that's the only way to get these pages to stick to the plastic pocket pages. So I'm going to distribute these throughout the book, and then I'm going to include some other pages with pockets. So I'm going to show you how to put this last page on, and I've got my measurements. I'm just going to put them here on the screen if you want to get those right here. I'm just going to share with you as I work along. So these are the extra pages, and what I want to do is put my double-sided adhesive onto the plastic page, and this is going to hold it in place as the glue sets up. So I'm going to take the paper backing off of this side, then I'll take the page that I'm going to add. So this is 10 inches wide by 6 3/4 inches tall and scored at 5. So this is going to be folded and the nice edge will be on the outside. What I'm going to do is bring this in here and line it up with the seam where the stitching is that's actually just melted. So what I'm going to do is take my book and turn it on the side so I can get this lined up well, and I'm going to center this just by eyeballing it. That way I know that it's on straight and even, and pull the tape from this side of the page as well. And then I'm going to come in with that Tombow and add a little bead of that along this outside edge. That's why I cut this paper big enough so that it would overlap and I could glue paper to paper. And then very carefully fold it back. Make sure not to use so much glue that it splooges out. And then clip these together so that you have a good contact while that glue sets up. So while you're waiting for that glue, this is a really good time to go ahead and do your fussy cutting so that you can have all of your pieces ready. And if you have all your pages that you've pulled out as you were working along, you can definitely store all those fussy cut images inside the sleeves so they will stay protected and not have any fragile parts getting stuck on anything. So I'm going to let that set up, and then I'll come back in when I'm ready to move on to the next step. Okay, so I've got my glue all set now. I took the clips off, and I want to incorporate a couple of these with tab tops that will extend past the edge of the book. So I put my first one in pretty quickly into the book, and it has the tab on the top. So for this one I want to have the tab on the bottom, and these pages are not necessary. If you don't want to add the tab portion, you don't have to, but if you do, you'll have to add 3/4 of an inch to get that tab cut out, and I just use my envelope punch board to do that, so that's pretty easy, but not necessary. And so I have that same 10 inches wide plus extra if you want a tab, and 6 3/4 inches tall. I'm just going to add that right to what we glued on. I'm going back to the double-sided adhesive now for this, and now I have my tab at the bottom of the book. I'm leaving this portion open because I'm going to add a ribbon closure later, so I've got to have room for that. So I have one page that has the flip on the top, and then I have one that's in the middle. Remember, I took 3 pages from one side and 2 off the other. This is the middle portion, and this is just going to get a different treatment, but it had to have the paper so that I could add things to it. And then on the last set of pages, I have the one that we just created, and this will open as well, and that gives us a lot of extra room inside for all of the things that we want to add to it. For the back of the book, I did already finish. Remember, this is our pocket page, so we can include things in here. And then I'm going to do the same treatment to the left-hand side so that it will all look nice because it will show together. So I've got the plaid for the pocket portion, and because I'm not using any extra solid color cardstock, I just cut all my pieces to be the height of the book. And then I've got my secondary pattern, that large, beautiful Christmas floral. I'm going to line that up with the pocket and make sure it's nice and square along the side. And now you have a place to tuck in some additional tags. Okay, so want to go ahead and fill in the first page. So this is still the sleeve, and I'm going to make a folded insert. So what I have is 2 pages here. Now I'm going back to 65 pound weight cardstock just because it will be less bulky on the inside. We don't need to worry about it being sturdy so much because the cover is very chunky and thick. So these pockets will hold a 4x6 photo, and because they're top loading, I can just tuck my inserts into them like this. It's tempting to want to cut your paper the width all the way across the sleeve, but you should not do that because you're gonna leave too much bulk on the inside and the pages will not flip properly. But you can leave the full height. So I'm gonna make mine 6 1/4 of an inch because it's easier to pull them out if you have paper to grab onto rather than getting into that sleeve to pull your insert out. Now I didn't have any paper that was long enough to make it all out of one sheet, so I have 2 pieces here. One is 4 1/8 by 6 1/4, and then this one is just the offcut, and I went ahead and scored it at 6 1/4. Then I'll just line this up here on the bottom and attach them at the top. I'm going to leave this portion on the outside because that is less bulk going into the pocket. So I've got this one finished on the inside with that beautiful pattern paper, and what I want to do is go ahead and finish the front. This is also a good place to do some layering, so if you have some offcuts as you were working along on the other pages, you can definitely add them here and get a nice layering effect. So I'm going to put this here at the bottom, and it will be a pretty plaid layer. It will also help to stretch these pages that aren't quite long enough. So now we have this insert done. I'm not going to do the back because, once again, I don't want to add extra bulk, but what a good place to do journaling. There's plenty of room for writing back here. And so what I want to do is make some beautiful clusters of those fussy cut images. I'm going to incorporate some other elements like some die cut doilies and this label that I created with that Dymo old school vintagey kind of a label maker, and I'm trying to just keep everything really flat but have a nice layered look. And so I've got that sweet little VW van, and I'm going to put my embellishment here, making sure that I don't overlap any of the edges. I cut a tag for the background here with just some of the offcuts, and then added a reinforcer that I just created with some mirror cardstock to have a nice finish look. So this is going to be our first folded insert, and it's going to be our first page. So this will be slipped right inside of that sleeve. Now remember, these sleeves have that liner that separates one side from another, and so I'm gonna go ahead and tuck this next sheet into that back page. So this is going to be page 2, and once again I'm just using those pretty florals and layering on some secondary patterns and keeping it so that I can pull them out of the top pretty easily. So here is our first file folder tabbed insert portion. So whether you're making a scrapbook or a planner or an organizer, you want to have places where you can tuck things into that you don't want to glue down. So if this is your list for gifts or shopping, you want to be able to tuck that underneath here and keep that secure in your book. And so I'm just going to have a full page of that beautiful floral, and then this was the back side when I cut those portions out, so I just flipped it over. I'm going to use that as sort of a belly band, but because I want to leave as much room that's usable space underneath, I'm going to go ahead and use that Tombow again and just have that glue on the very ends. I'll go ahead and use my clips again, and that will help to give this a nice contact while the glue sets up. And remember not to go too heavy-handed with that glue. Use your clips. So while that sets up, we might as well keep working and do the inside pages. For the left-hand side, I have the same pattern. I think it is helpful to line everything up from the inside. You can't have these seams matching exactly because that creates too much bulk in this seam and it won't fold correctly. So I'm just going to come in here and make sure I've got that off by just a sliver, and that will leave it enough room for that to close without the paper buckling on the inside. You see how that's going to open perfectly now. I've got one more page for this side. I'm still using that same beautiful large floral, but I want to include a tip-in as well, because this is going to give me a place to include more of that beautiful fussy cut images, and then more room inside, because more room is always good in a scrapbook. So I've just got this sheet folded. This is going to be 5 by 5, and then I scored it at 4. So I will have a nice generous flip for this page. So I'm just going to capture that tail between the pattern paper and the book base. And once again, I'm making sure not to go too far over. And so on my tip-in, I've got room for another one of those clusters of the fussy cut ephemera and another tag. Here's another one of those sentiments that I use the Dymo punch on, and then I'm just going to add this here to my tip-in. This collection did not have journal cards, so I'm just kind of creating my own arrangements for these. And then I picked Mary for this page because I think if I had this kind of little car, I would definitely drive around town with a little tree on top. I think that would be so festive and fun. Okay, so here's the inside pages of that first file folder. Let's go ahead and jump back to the cover because our adhesive is set up now and we can put on our front page with the belly band. And for this page, I can just go ahead and line that up with the edge of our folder, and that is our first finished folder on the inside. So for this page, I want to have a pocket that I can tuck things into, and I'm using that large winter floral pattern, but I cut it a little extra long so that I could score it and it would create its own pocket. So for this page, it's going to be 9¼ inch by 5 inches. And then I scored it at 6¾ because that is the height of our inserts that we just added, and I'm going to use tape on these to seal that up. And then I'll add it to this side, and we get a bonus pocket out of that. And I've got a couple more of these pages to tuck into the sleeves with the pattern layering. So I've got this one that goes pretty nicely, I think, with that beautiful bird. And then on this side, I have this one to tuck in. And you can pull these out and put your photos on them or do journaling on the back. There's so many different possibilities. You could do any kind of thing that you want for that and then just tuck them back in. And so here is our page that does not have a file folder attached. So this is the very center of the book, and I'm going to put a special page here. I've got more of that large, beautiful floral. Then I've got a little envelope here that I created with my envelope punch board. Here is another piece of that fussy cut little house with sweet little windows. I'm going to use this to tuck the flap in to keep that secure so you can put things in the pocket. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of my Tombow to the very bottom, basically making a tuck spot. Then I'm just going to center that as best I can, and then add that here, and then clip that again while the glue sets up. While we're waiting for that, we can move right along to a sweet little inset here. I've just got a scalloped cut rectangle frame with a little stitching detail. I'm going to aim that pretty close to the top so that I leave room for my envelope, and then I put a strip of the offcuts. This has a polka dot on it. It's very hard to see. It's very subtle. I don't know, can you see that with the light on it? But it's going to be a great background for adding some journaling to. So I've got a couple more of those images cut out, and I'm going to layer these right on here so that there's room if you want to include some writing. This cocoa looks amazing with all the marshmallow on the top, and that will be a great way to add some writing. So my glue has set up on the little house, and I'm going to attach that with more of that double-sided adhesive tape. You can see how I can just tuck the flap of the envelope right underneath that house, and it will keep it secure. I'm just going to center that here and aim it a little closer to the bottom so you can see that pretty floral pattern between that and the upper layer. So you can include things in the pocket that you want to keep secure, and then just tuck it underneath there, and it will be safe inside that pocket. So for this side, I have another one of my folded pockets. So I'm using both sides of that pattern paper. It's so nice that they coordinate so perfectly. This side's going to get another one of the top folding inserts. I'll just tuck that into here, and that is beautifully coordinated with that other floral on this page. And then I just got one regular insert to tuck into this pocket. You can imagine how thick and chunky this book is getting as we work along. Okay, so we'll move on to the next file folder portion, and I've got another one of those large pieces with the belly band, and I've alternated that pretty ivy with the large floral. That's the pattern that was on the back side. And then I'll add that to the inside as well. Remember to leave that little gap in the middle. Then another page with a flip for this side, and another cluster of those pretty fussy cut images. Here is a pocket page for the back of that, and then two more of these inserts with the layered patterns. And that is going to complete the inside of our organizer or planner or scrapbook. So we can work on the cover. See how nice and thick and chunky that is? It's so heavy, and we didn't use any dimensional elements. It's all just layers and layers of paper. So this is the time where you want to bring in some trim. If you are going to include a closure which I usually like to do. And I'm just going to roll out a generous amount so that I can tie a nice bow. I'm going to use a little hot glue to just tack this on, and then we'll capture that between the layers of the cover and the front of the book. So for the cover, I'm going to use the layering again of the florals and that pretty plaid. Remember, I'm not using the solid cardstock, so this is just going to go right onto the base. Then I've got another of that plaid, but this time I'm bringing it in as a die cut, just kind of a little dovetail banner. Here it's got a stitching detail, so it's got a little bit of extra something something. Here is a doily that I cut from crisp white cardstock. This is just helping to break up those paper patterns a little bit so that I can top it with the focal point. And that's another one of those sweet little cars from the cut apart sheet with the tree on top. I put this layer on foam to build up some dimension. And then here is my floral arrangement. So I've got a couple here from Little Birdie Crafts. This one is from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I swapped out the stamens as I do because I thought gold would coordinate a little better. Little die cut holly leaves, little loopy twine bows, and then here is my bow for the back, just a pretty stitch satin. And I'm incorporating that because it coordinates with the lighter color in the tree, just to brighten it up a little. I'm just going to add this here. Okay, so I'm taking a little bit more of that offcut as I was working along. I die cut a pretty little banner with the polka dot, and then I've just got some foam spacers on the portions that will fall onto the book. This one is going to be supported by the tree, so it's okay as it is. I'm just going to come in at a nice angle here like a banner would and fill in that corner. I might come back and crop the end of that tail off just so that it isn't a fragile piece. And then I've got a couple little charms here. I'm going to add them to the top. Then I'll cover the top of that cut string with this little vintage button. Got a couple little sequins here, and that'll be a nice balance for the embellishments on the top. And I'll just add those again with my tombow. Then I've got some clear stickles here. I'm just going to add a little detail to that tree. I'm not just going to go all over and crazy. I'm going to just kind of draw out thin lines that kind of mimic the movement of the branches. And that is it for the cover. If you enjoyed this project, make sure you come back tomorrow for day 2. Remember, you can find links in the description for the tutorial for the base for this book, as well as all of our social media sites, these collections that I'm using, and the trim from Really Reasonable Ribbon. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave me a comment and a big thumbs up. I hope to see everyone back here tomorrow at 7 for day 2. If you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. I hope you all have a happy and productive day, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.